The first thing you should never do for a man is lose your voice, because the moment you start silencing yourself to keep the peace, you're putting his comfort above your truth. And that might feel easier in the moment, but it slowly chips away at who you are. Think about it. Every time you hold back what you want to say, every time you swallow a concern, every time you pretend something doesn't bother you when it actually does, you're teaching both yourself and him that your needs aren't important. Over time, that silence doesn't just create peace. It creates distance. It creates resentment. It creates an invisible wall where you no longer feel safe to be honest. You start walking on eggshells, thinking that if you just stay quiet a little longer, everything will stay fine, but inside you know it's not fine. And that's the slow erosion of your self-respect. Your voice is more than just words. It's your identity. It's the way you show up in the world. It's the way you communicate your values and your boundaries. When you give that up, you're not just being quiet, you're actually surrendering a part of yourself. And once you start down that road, it's hard to recognize where you end and where someone else begins. Relationships are meant to be built on honesty, and honesty can't exist if one person is muted. The more you suppress your feelings, the more you start to believe that they don't matter. And that belief will show up in every area of your life, not just your relationship. That's why losing your voice is one of the most damaging things you can do, because it doesn't just affect the relationship, it affects how you see yourself. When you keep your voice, you give the relationship a chance to grow stronger, even when it's uncomfortable, because truth always brings clarity. If you're afraid that speaking up will push him away, then you need to ask yourself, what kind of relationship do I really want? One where I have to pretend, or one where I get to be fully myself? The truth is, the right man won't be intimidated by your voice. He'll be drawn to it because your honesty makes him trust you more. Your perspective challenges him. Your confidence inspires him. But if you hide all that to keep him happy, then you're not giving him the chance to know the real you. And that means he's in a relationship with a version of you that doesn't even exist. Sometimes losing your voice happens gradually. It doesn't come from one big decision. It comes from dozens of little moments where you say, it's not worth it, or I'll just let it go, or he won't understand anyway. Each of those moments feels small, but together they become a pattern. And before long, you've taught yourself to stay silent as a way of surviving. But silence is not survival. Silence is surrender. And the longer you live in it, the harder it becomes to break free. What makes it even harder is that people around you might get used to that silence. They might even prefer it because it keeps things easier for them, but easier for them doesn't mean healthier for you. The courage to keep your voice doesn't mean shouting or arguing. It means refusing to let fear control you. It means speaking your truth with calmness and clarity, even when your voice shakes, because the goal is not to win a fight. The goal is to stay aligned with yourself. And sometimes when you do that, you'll see who's truly capable of hearing you and who's not. And as painful as that can be, it's better to know the truth than to live in the illusion of peace. A relationship that requires you to erase yourself is not love, it's control. And the cost of staying in that space is far greater than the temporary discomfort of speaking up. Your voice matters because it sets the tone for how you are treated. It tells the world that you know your value. It tells the person you're with that you have limits and expectations, and those who respect you will respect your voice. Losing it means giving someone else the power to define your reality, and no one deserves that much control over you. Keeping it means you're willing to be fully seen, fully known, fully valued, and that's the only kind of love worth holding on to. The second thing you should never do for a man is sacrifice your boundaries, because the moment you allow someone to step past the line you've drawn, you're teaching them that your limits are negotiable, and that lesson never fades. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks. They are the clear signals that say what is safe, what is healthy, and what is respectful for you. And when you compromise them just to avoid conflict or to keep someone happy, you are quietly giving them permission to put their needs above your well-being. You might think it's just one small exception, just one time you let something slide, but every time you let it slide, you move the line further away from where you meant it to be, and little by little you end up standing in a place you swore you'd never stand. That erosion of boundaries doesn't happen loudly, it happens quietly, and that's what makes it so dangerous, because you don't always see how much you've given away until you look back and realize you no longer recognize yourself. When you hold firm to your boundaries, you are not being selfish, you are being self-respecting, and self-respect is the foundation of any healthy connection. A man who truly cares for you will not only honor your boundaries, he will appreciate them because they create trust, clarity, and consistency. On the other hand, a man who resists your boundaries or constantly tests them is showing you that his comfort matters more than your security, and that's a red flag you should never ignore. Too often, people mistake love for sacrifice, but real love doesn't require you to give up who you are to keep someone else around. Sacrifice of kindness, patience, and compromise is normal, but sacrifice of identity, safety, and dignity is never love. It's manipulation disguised as devotion. There's a silent strength in knowing where your lines are and refusing to erase them. Boundaries are what protect you from repeating old mistakes. They are what remind you that your time, your energy, and your body are not open for someone else's unlimited access. The clearer you are with your limits, the more respect you demand without ever having to raise your voice, and that's powerful. But when you abandon those limits, you don't just lose respect from others, you lose respect for yourself, and that's a wound that cuts deeper than any external disappointment. Self-betrayal is the hardest betrayal to heal from, because you were the one who gave the green light to something you knew in your heart was wrong. Sometimes people cross boundaries not because they don't understand them, but because they want to test if you mean what you say. In those moments, how you respond matters more than what you said in the first place, because boundaries that aren't enforced are just suggestions, and suggestions don't carry weight. If you say you won't tolerate something, but then you tolerate it, you're not just teaching him how to treat you, you're teaching yourself to settle for less. That's why protecting your boundaries is not about punishing anyone else. It's about protecting your own dignity and reinforcing your own sense of worth. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to expect respect. You are allowed to change your mind when something doesn't feel right, and you never owe an apology for defending the lines that keep you safe. It's important to remember that boundaries are not just about stopping bad behavior. They are also about creating space for healthy behavior to grow. They help you filter who deserves access to you and who doesn't, who values your presence and who only values your compliance. When a man respects your boundaries, it shows he respects the person you are, not just the role you play in his life, and that difference is everything. When you sacrifice your boundaries, you send the message that his approval is worth more than your peace. But peace that comes at the cost of your self-respect is never real peace. Holding your boundaries takes courage because it means you're willing to face conflict, rejection, or even loss. But the reality is that anyone who walks away because you stood firm was never meant to stay. The people who are meant to stay will adjust, they will listen, they will respect, and they will grow alongside you. Sacrificing your boundaries might keep someone temporarily, but keeping them is what ensures you're surrounded by the right people long term. The second thing you should never do for a man is sacrifice your boundaries, because once you give away those lines, you give away the blueprint for how you deserve to be treated. And without that blueprint, you leave the door wide open for disrespect to become the standard. The third thing you should never do for a man is give up your dreams, because the moment you set aside the goals and passions that light you up inside just to make space for his, you are slowly teaching yourself that your purpose is less important than his comfort. Dreams are not optional decorations in life. They are the engine that drives your growth, your joy, your fulfillment, and when you abandon them for the sake of someone else, you are cutting off the very source of energy that makes you alive. It might feel noble at first, it might feel like you're proving your love, but what you're really doing is proving that you're willing to disappear piece by piece. And the problem with disappearing is that eventually you wake up one day realizing you no longer recognize the person in the mirror. That's not love, that's loss. And the longer you live that way, the harder it becomes to recover the parts of yourself that you abandoned. Your dreams are not selfish, they are not inconvenient, and they are not too much. They are your calling, and when you silence that calling, you are rejecting the very thing that makes you unique. A healthy relationship is never about one person shining while the other one stands in the shadows. It's about both people lifting each other up, both people making space for the other's goals, both people celebrating each other's victories. When you give up your dreams, you're not just betraying yourself, you're also robbing the relationship of the chance to experience the best version of you, the version that is passionate, inspired, and alive with purpose. A man who truly values you will not feel threatened by your ambitions. He will support them, encourage them, and stand beside you while you chase them, because your growth is not his competition. It's his privilege to witness. Too often, people convince themselves that sacrificing a dream for love is romantic, but it's not romance. It's compromise that turns into resentment. That resentment builds quietly, like a shadow that follows you everywhere. And it shows up in little ways, in frustration, in irritability, in sadness you can't explain. You might smile and tell yourself it was the right choice, but deep down there's a voice that never stops asking, what if? And that what if grows louder with time. The truth is, you don't have to choose between love and dreams. The right kind of love makes it possible for both to coexist, but the wrong kind of love will demand that you choose, and that demand is proof it was never healthy in the first place. Sometimes giving up a dream doesn't look obvious. It's not always a dramatic announcement. It's subtle, like saying you'll try later, or telling yourself now isn't the right time, or convincing yourself it's just a small thing to let go of. But small sacrifices add up, and one day you realize all those laters turned into never, and the person who once had fire in their eyes now only carries ashes of what could have been. You deserve more than that. You deserve to be in a space where your dreams are not only allowed, but celebrated, because your passion is part of your power, and your power should never be dimmed just to keep someone else comfortable. There's also something important about the way chasing your dreams teaches you who you are. It pushes you, it stretches you, it grows your character, and when you abandon that journey, you stunt your own development. You are not just losing the dream, you are losing the lessons, the growth, the confidence, and the sense of accomplishment that comes with fighting for something that matters. No relationship is worth trading that away, because a relationship that costs you your potential is too expensive to keep. Love is supposed to add to your life, not subtract from it. And if your dreams are shrinking while your relationship grows, then that's not balance. That's imbalance disguised as devotion. The courage to keep your dreams alive doesn't mean ignoring the relationship. It means refusing to abandon yourself in it. It means finding ways to pursue your goals while still being present and supportive. It means believing that you are allowed to be both loved and ambitious. It means trusting that if someone truly cares for you, they won't ask you to choose between them and your future. If they do, that's not a sign of love. It's a sign of control, and you should never confuse control for commitment. The third thing you should never do for a man is give up your dreams, because those dreams are the foundation of your future, the spark of your identity, and the proof that your life has meaning beyond the role you play in someone else's story. The fourth thing you should never do for a man is excuse bad behavior, because the moment you start justifying things you know are wrong, you begin lowering the standard for how you allow yourself to be treated. At first, it might seem harmless. You tell yourself, he was just tired. He didn't mean it that way. It was just a mistake. But over time, those small excuses become a pattern, and that pattern becomes the new normal. What you allow will always continue, and when you dismiss bad behavior, you're sending the message that your boundaries are flexible and your worth is negotiable. Every time you overlook disrespect, every time you accept dishonesty, every time you minimize neglect, you're not protecting the relationship, you're protecting his comfort at the cost of your dignity. The longer you defend behavior that hurts you, the deeper you entrench yourself in a cycle where you believe mistreatment is part of love, and that belief will keep you trapped far longer than the behavior itself. Bad behavior doesn't always look loud or obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, like dismissing your feelings, making jokes at your expense, ignoring your needs, or breaking promises and brushing it off like it's no big deal. These small actions may not feel catastrophic, but together they chip away at your confidence and create an environment where you start questioning if you're asking for too much. The truth is, you're not asking for too much, you're asking for basic respect, and respect is the bare minimum in any healthy relationship. When you excuse those behaviors, you teach yourself to settle for crumbs, and eventually crumbs start to feel like a feast, but deep down, you know you were never meant to live on leftovers. Excusing bad behavior doesn't make you compassionate. It makes you complicit in your own pain, and that's a reality that is hard to accept but necessary to see clearly. There's a difference between forgiveness and excusing. Forgiveness is about releasing yourself from resentment, but excusing is about pretending something didn't matter, and those are not the same. Forgiveness can coexist with accountability, but excusing erases accountability altogether. When you excuse someone's bad choices, you remove the opportunity for growth, because why would they change if you've already made peace with the damage? Growth only happens when there are consequences, when the weight of their actions is acknowledged, and when you stand firm in saying this is not acceptable. Excusing denies that reality and gives them a free pass, and people who are given free passes rarely stop taking advantage of them. It's important to remember that love is not proven by how much pain you can endure. Endurance might show loyalty, but it does not create change, and it does not create respect. You don't earn someone's love by suffering through their mistakes. You earn it by being fully yourself, by holding them accountable, and by refusing to settle for anything less than mutual respect. When you believe that making excuses is part of keeping the peace, what you're really doing is silencing your own voice to avoid conflict. But real peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of respect. And without respect, there is no peace. There's only quiet suffering. The dangerous part about excusing bad behavior is that it doesn't just affect the present, it sets the tone for the future. If he knows he can get away with dismissing you once, he will do it again. If he knows he can bend the truth without consequences, he will bend it further next time. Every excuse you make becomes a permission slip, and the more permission slips you hand out, the more power you lose over your own life. That's why breaking the cycle of excuses is not just about addressing one behavior, it's about reclaiming your voice, your boundaries, and your self-worth. Excusing bad behavior often comes from fear. Fear of losing the relationship, fear of being alone, fear of not being enough. But what you gain by holding on in silence is nothing compared to what you lose in the process. You lose trust in yourself, you lose confidence in your value, and you lose the chance to build a relationship that is actually healthy. The right man will not require you to excuse behavior that hurts you. He will face it, take responsibility, and do the work to change, because real love doesn't just ask you to accept, it asks both people to grow. The fourth thing you should never do for a man is excuse bad behavior, because once you normalize disrespect, you invite it to stay, and the more you protect someone from accountability, the more you abandon yourself in the process. The fifth thing you should never do for a man is forget your worth, because the moment you start believing you are lucky just to be chosen, you begin shrinking yourself to fit into places you were never meant to fit. Worth is not something a relationship gives you. It's something you bring into a relationship. And when you forget that, you start operating from a place of desperation instead of confidence. That desperation makes you tolerate what you should walk away from. It makes you compete for attention that should be freely given, and it makes you accept treatment that falls far below the standard you deserve. When you forget your worth, you start confusing survival with love. And love was never meant to feel like barely getting by. It was meant to feel like partnership, respect, and joy. Too many people stay in situations where they are undervalued simply because they don't remember how valuable they are, and that forgetfulness becomes the very reason they keep settling. Your worth is not tied to how much someone wants you, how much they validate you, or how much they approve of you. Your worth is already set. It doesn't change when someone leaves, and it doesn't grow when someone stays. Forgetting that truth is dangerous because it makes you dependent on someone else's validation to feel whole. And dependence like that always leads to disappointment. A man who doesn't see your value doesn't get to decide it. He only reveals his inability to recognize it. But if you forget your own worth, you'll start seeing yourself through his distorted lens. The more you do that, the more you believe lies about yourself, and those lies rob you of the confidence to stand tall, to set boundaries, and to demand the respect you deserve. Forgetting your worth often shows up in small compromises that don't look harmful at first. It looks like putting his needs above yours every single time, apologizing for things that aren't your fault, lowering your standards to keep him comfortable, or staying quiet when you want to speak. Each of these choices feels small, but together they send a loud message that you don't see yourself as equal. And when you don't see yourself as equal, you can't expect anyone else to either. Remembering your worth means reminding yourself daily that you bring value simply by being who you are, not by how much you can sacrifice, fix, or prove. The right man won't require you to forget that. He will respect it, honor it, and even help you grow into it more fully, because your strength is not a threat to him. It's a gift. When you forget your worth, you also forget your power to choose. You start to believe you don't have options, that this relationship is the best you'll ever get, that walking away means failure, and that mindset traps you in a cycle of settling. But when you remember your worth, you realize you always have a choice. The choice to leave what doesn't serve you, the choice to raise your standards, the choice to demand more, and the choice to stand on your own if that's what it takes. Choice is power, and power only belongs to those who know they are worthy of using it. But if you hand that power away in exchange for crumbs of affection, you are living far beneath what you deserve. There is nothing more attractive than someone who knows their worth, because that confidence sets the tone in every interaction. It doesn't mean arrogance, it means assurance. It means you walk into relationships as an equal partner, not as someone waiting to be validated. That assurance allows you to love freely without fear, because your identity is not tied to whether someone stays or goes. It's rooted in who you are and what you bring to the table. Forgetting your worth makes love conditional on someone else's actions, but remembering your worth makes love a choice, not a necessity, and that is where freedom lives. Sometimes people forget their worth because of past wounds, rejection, or failed relationships, and they start to believe that history is evidence of who they are. But your past does not erase your value. It only reveals the lessons you needed to learn, and those lessons are meant to make you stronger, not smaller. You are not defined by who left, by who didn't choose you, or by who mistreated you. You are defined by your resilience, your strength, and the unshakable truth that you are worthy of love, respect, and joy without condition. Forgetting that truth might keep you tied to people who don't deserve you, but remembering it will set you free from anyone who can't rise to the level of what you bring. The fifth thing you should never do for a man is forget your worth, because the moment you stop seeing yourself as valuable, you invite others to do the same. And when that becomes the standard, you trade the love you deserve for the illusion of love that only leaves you empty.